Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson, and of course on our show we discuss so many of the issues facing boomers, their parents, and what we know, of course, is an aging population, which I'm a statistic and I'm part of. And so again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to remind you that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a professional senior placement and elder care consulting organization that has a national network of advisors to help in determining the right path for senior living and receiving proper care. So whether it's in-home care, assisted living, residential or memory care, or you just need an advocate, get the necessary advice from a senior care advisor in your area by calling Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to the website at seniorcareauthority.com. And again, I can't thank you all enough for the number of people that our listeners are growing each and every day. Many of you go on to iTunes, iHeartRadio, but I would say a lot of you now are just downloading our free app. And if you haven't done so, it's an easy way to get up to date on all of our shows. You just have to, if you have an Android or iPhone, just have to go to your apps, type in The Aging Boomers, download it, and you get updated on all the shows. So share with friends and families, a lot of great information. I also want to thank you. My book came out called The Aging Boomers. It's on Amazon, and many of you have ordered that as well. It's a compilation of some of the interviews we've done in the past, and we're getting some nice rave reviews on it. So I'm thrilled about that as well. And I'm also thrilled about our guest we're going to have on today. His name is Michael Molland. Michael is a highly rated trial attorney and elder advocate committed to ensuring that elders and their families are treated fairly by those they trust with their health and money. For decades, Michael successfully took cases to trial as a partner of two of America's largest law firms. In 2013, Michael started his own firm, Molland Law, in order to use his trial skills as a corporate lawyer to help the most vulnerable in our communities, seniors and the families who care for them. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I know you're out on your ranch right now, so he told me that we may hear some horses and cows or whatever in the background, which is great. I think it's wonderful. And in this high-tech world, we could do these interviews from anywhere to anywhere. So, again, thanks for taking the time out of your day.
Right. It's Old McDonald on the farm this morning, and I'm happy to talk to you on it. Thank you.
Great. So, elder abuse is just such a huge issue and certainly topic of conversation in our industry. And I know we spoke briefly before we came on the air here. And I guess I just wanted to get your overall view, and then we'll get into some specifics, because I see this myself, okay? Most of the care that's taking place today in our country is being provided by many of the, some big corporations, big companies, and they have board of directors, and they look at their bottom line. And I guess, I'm a big, believer in that and capitalism and all of that, but I guess I wanted to get your viewpoint. Do you feel that is having an effect on the care of our elderly?
Well, the answer is I do, and let me tell you why. The elder abuse has been around for as long as people have been getting old. The problem now, of course, is that there's just many more of us who are getting old. That has caused the problem to really transcend the family. The conflict between generations and the vulnerability of old people has been around us since the time of Shakespeare and King Lear. But what's changed is now elderly are not being cared for as much by their family or by their community, but instead they are increasingly being cared for by corporate concerns. And there's some real kind of fundamental demographic reasons for that, which I'd be happy to share with you.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So what are you seeing? There. I guess you look back. I look back at maybe my grandparents. All right, and either you were at home or in a nursing home, as we called it, or convalescent center or something. I mean, that name has changed, of course. But now there's just so many different options, a lot more in-home care being provided by third-party services, etc. So what do you see as that trend? And to our listeners who may have a loved one that they're either caring for or may need care, what are some of the red flags, if anything?
Yeah, let me kind of back up a little bit, because I think to understand what I will call the kind of for-profit elder care dilemma that the senior population is in, we probably should talk a little bit about demographics.
Yeah,
I'm
that'd
sure
be great.
You have had on this show that talk about the demographics, but it's not just that. The boomers constitute a big section of our population. There's a lot of them, and they're aging. It's sort of what is behind that number. Let me just give you a couple of statistics, I think, that enlightened me on the subject when I really began practicing elder care law in earnest. About 1/3 of Americans today are between the ages of 45 and 65 are single. That's doubled since 30 years ago. We know that people who are over 65 is expected to double again in the next 15 to 20 years. The key fact is that the number of family members who can provide care for this burgeoning population, boomers primarily, will only rise about 25% over that same time. That just means that there just isn't enough people, there aren't enough mates to adequately care for the number of seniors, and it's going to get much worse. We know right now, according to government statistics, that about 1/4 of the aging population over 65 is aging alone by themselves. So what that means really is that we have a population that increasingly is going to be taken care of either outside their home in institutions or in their home alone by caregivers. That's just the fact. It's a fact now, and it's going to double in importance in the next 30 years. So when I see that, that means that we are going to be increasingly reliant upon the non-for-profit and the for-profit care industry, whether it be in hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living, or home care. And many of the elderly are going to either not have an advocate in the family, or if they have an advocate, that advocate is going to not live close to them, is going to have a job. It's going to be very difficult to care for them. So we are going to be increasingly reliant upon the goodwill, good faith, and what I will call, and we'll talk a little bit about, the fiduciary duty of the for-profit industry to care for these elderly.
Okay, so I think people need to understand that if people are not being taken care of at home, like I brought up my grandparents, you were in a nursing home or you're at home, now there are many more options. I mean, a lot of people don't realize there's more assisted living beds throughout this country, and certainly in the state of California where you and I are both based, than there are nursing home beds. A lot of people don't realize that. There's not even it's not even close as far as number of beds. So it's changing. But what's your opinion of nursing homes in the future of care, especially with government looking to cut down spending on Medicare, certainly quality of care through the Affordable Care Act. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's well, you kind of nailed the next topic when you see the emerging problem. How do the nursing homes fit into it, and what's happening with nursing home care? Right now, we got about a little over 1 million people living in nursing homes, and in about 15 years, we're going to have about 5 million. That's a population the size of Norway. So we're going to have a small Scandinavian country living in nursing homes in the United States in about 10, 15 years. So that's a lot of people. Because the pressure on nursing homes is going to be so intense, we're going to see more and more really sick people in nursing homes over time, and we have. The people that have been in nursing homes traditionally are going to start moving into assisted living because the nursing homes are just busting at the seams. And we're going to see a lot of very ill people who would ordinarily be in hospitals now going to nursing homes and staying there for a long time. And I think that the regulation of nursing homes will become more rigorous because of that. And the medical activities and the medical supplies of the nursing homes will become much greater than they are in the future. And when you talk about the declining Medicare, I think actually the nursing homes are going to be more and more reliant upon Medicare to take care of these people because of that, because they're going to be sicker and sicker people that are going to be going into the nursing homes as the boomers age.
So when you brought up that 5 million number in nursing homes, did you mean nursing homes specifically, or were you talking nursing and assisted living together?
No, this is just what we call a skilled nursing facility, not assisted living. I think we should talk for your audience so that they understand the difference. There's a clear difference between a nursing home, which is a skilled nursing home, and an assisted living facility. And the difference primarily is that skilled nursing facilities are subject to usually a lot of state regulations, certainly they are in California, where the assisted living facilities generally don't supply medical services, at least not directly, and as a result are much less regulated by the authorities and certainly the state of California by the state regulators. Generally, people who go to assisted living pay for that stay themselves. There are some exceptions, but that's mostly a self-pay function. People who go to nursing homes, on the other hand, are generally subsidized by either Medicare or Medicaid. In California, we call it Medi-Cal. It's about 80% or roughly around that number in nursing homes receive government entitlements to be there. That's not true for assisted living. In fact, it's just the reverse. Most people pay by themselves. And the quality of care they get is directly related to that. In other words, if the government's paying for your care, the persons that are receiving those entitlements are going to treat you one way. If you're paying for yourself, like an assisted living in situation, you'll receive a different standard of care.
Yeah. I think, my point on the Medicare is, being in this business, I mean, I see a lot of, people in nursing homes that don't need to be there. I see it all the time. And even people at the nursing homes admit they don't have to be there, but Medicare is paying for it. Or Medicaid is paying for it. And they may
Medicare
be...
Medicare is a 600-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to nursing homes.
Right. So, based on the Affordable Care Act, some people call it Obamacare, I'm seeing a trend, I don't know if you are, that, people may not be in a nursing home or skilled nursing facility as long as maybe they have been in the past. They may be moved home quicker. They may be moved to assisted living quicker. And the onus is going to be on the family to pay for it. Okay? Do you see that as a trend?
Sure. I think the way to understand health care and custody care, custodial care for the elderly is when they are being taken care of by institutions and for-profit enterprises, is to follow the money. And if you understand how those institutions are being paid, you understand a lot about how the boomers are being cared for. And when you raise the point that people will stay in nursing homes longer if Medicare is paying for it, the converse is true. When Medicare stops paying for a nursing home stay, and it does often, then you see an increase in discharge rates from nursing homes. In other words, the amount of money that is available from Medicare to pay for patient stay at nursing homes greatly determines their care and greatly determines whether they'll stay there.
Mm-hmm. So, are you concerned? I mean, I asked this question to several people. You know, is America ready for what's going to happen?
Well, the answer to that is pretty much an unqualified no. I don't think that. How can you be ready for something that's never happened before? There have never been the number of people who are over 65 on this planet that there are right now, and the situation is going to double over the next few years. So no, I think we're in uncharted territory. There are a lot of people who are with very much good faith and a great deal of intelligence trying to cope with it, but the problem is really overwhelming, and there's going to be a lot of turmoil in the next 30 years as we care for ourselves, really, as we age.
So let's talk about maybe a possible conflict of interest here with corporations, even hospice. I mean, a lot of people think that hospice, many of them think it may be government run or at the very least are nonprofits, but many of them are for-profit. Hospice, as well as many of these assisted living and skilled nursing, are for-profit companies. So do we have a conflict of interest here?
Well, sure. I think there's a fundamental conflict of interest when it comes to for-profit healthcare. And let me kind of explain why. As we said years ago, the elders were taken care of by their family, and generally in the home. As the family has tended to disintegrate, and the number of elder people are living by themselves, we've seen an explosion in corporate healthcare. So, whereas most nursing homes 20, 30 years ago were not for profit, now most are. Where most assisted living facilities were relatively scattered and not a big money-making venture, now we see billion-dollar corporations who have moved into the assisted living field. Hospice, as you brought up 20, 30 years ago, was essentially a Little Sisters of Mercy operation, almost all non-for-profit, and had very little for-profit corporate component to it. Now, hospice itself is mostly for-profit corporations, and there's a reason for that, of course, and that's because there is a great deal of money to be made by taking care of the elderly. So, when you have for-profit corporations taking care of elders, you have a basic conflict of interest. So these corporations have duties to their shareholders to make money. However, they also have a duty to the people they care for to care for them adequately, appropriately. And those two duties oftentimes conflict. It's not to say that for-profit corporations don't take care of the elderly well. I think 90% of them do. But there is a basic conflict of interest when your first duty is to make money, and your first duty is to take care of the elderly, because those two duties oftentimes just don't mix.
So those that are, our listeners are probably getting a little nervous here and saying, all right, what do I do to make sure that our family's not being taken advantage of, that my mother and father aren't being taken advantage of financially and in other ways? Help them feel hopefully better about the future of this. What do they need to do to help avoid any abuses or just being taken advantage of? Any thoughts there?
Sure. I think that's a really a significant question, I think. And I think the premise of the question, though, is kind of suggests the answer, and that is if an elder has a family member or an advocate to help them make these choices, help them in their care in a institution like a nursing home or assisted living facility, they're halfway there. The big thing, I think, is to show up at a nursing home or an assisted living facility, ask questions, complain if you think you need to complain. The greasy wheel, is the one that will work best, and if there are problems, it needs lubrication, and the healthcare advocates and the family members are the ones that can do that. So, being there, asking questions, and being an advocate is probably the most important determinant of whether or not someone will get good care in a for-profit institution. I think that's number one. Number two, there are, I think, the questions to ask for an advocate or a family member for an elder really get triggered when there is a change of care. In other words, if everything's going smoothly and your loved one or elder is doing okay, that's one thing. But when there's a change of condition, when there's a discharge plan, when somebody goes from one level of care, whether up or down, one should ask, why is that taking place? Is it for the best, is in the best interest of the elder, my loved one, or is it in the best interest of the financial incentives that the institution has? For instance, if there's a discharge, has the elder run out of Medicare? If the person is leaving a institution going to assisted living, how did that assisted living facility get picked? How was that assisted living facility referred to the elder? It's the level of changes of care that trigger concern. So when something happens that makes it different with respect to the level of care, the advocate, the family member should say, okay, what's going on? Why is this happening? Ask the question and get answers.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we've got a few minutes left here, and I want to make sure that we certainly give you a chance to share with people how to get a hold of you. But before we do that, this month happens to be World Elder Abuse Awareness Month. So let's talk about, if you can, again, we could probably give a whole show to this, if not more. But tell us about some of the most common abuses that you're seeing and what people can do to try to avoid that from happening to a loved one or themselves.
Well, yeah, I probably should talk about. I'll talk about four abuses that happen, I think, with some frequency in the for-profit healthcare world, and they're general, but I think if you have a loved one in a facility or institution, you should keep your eye out for them. I think the first, the biggest abuse is abuse of Medicare. I don't think there's any question about that. Billions of dollars get spent inappropriately by overbilling Medicare, and I think that if you have a loved one whose care is being subsidized by Medicare, just keep an eye out of it. Is because Medicare, as I said, is the gorilla that runs the economic engines of the institutions, healthcare institutions that take care of individuals. So people staying too long because Medicare will pay for it, or people staying too short a stay because Medicare won't. I think it's the biggest abuse. Generally, overall, in the healthcare world these days. Number two, I think there's a lot of premature discharge or changing of facilities by that happens. That's often called dumping or improper transfer, but it's something that happens quite frequently, that people get put from one level of care, whether it's nursing home to assisted living or assisted living to nursing home or nursing home to hospice, inappropriately. And people should keep their eyes open for that. Third, this is something that I'm very concerned with in my practice. I think that the elderly are overdrugged. The use of antipsychotic medication and other, I will call mind drugs, to control the behavior of residents in nursing homes and even assisted living facilities, and sometimes people at home care, is wrong. I think it's obnoxious, and it's something that I certainly am very interested in putting a stop to as much as I can. It's also illegal, by the way, in many instances. But you can see why in an institution it's a lot easier to care for people if they're quiet and orderly and sleeping. And because of that, the use of medication to accomplish that, to quiet restless behavior, to quiet behavior that is difficult to control otherwise, I think is very prevalent in especially in the nursing home world. And I think that it's in some instances it's justified, in many instances it's not. So the use of what I will call of mind-altering drugs by institutions, I think, is a big abuse. And then finally, I think that there is a lot of undisclosed referrals that are going on in the for-corporate world. In other words, people being transferred from a nursing home to an assisted living facility, or vice versa, or obtaining a home care agency, where the amount of there's undisclosed interest that the for-profit corporation has in referring that person to another facility, another place. They make money off it, and is oftentimes it's not in the best interest of their client, not in the best interest of the elder or loved one. So when people change facility, I think people ought to say, is there a referral fee, a kickback going on? Oftentimes there's not, but there are instances where it's going on. So those are four abuses, Frank, that I think are very prevalent, and if people who are involved in elder care should keep their eyes peeled for them.
So bottom line, like when we first started talking, one of the biggest issues with the demographics, a lot of single people out there, aging, they may not have a loved one to be their advocate. Bottom line is get an advocate, whether it be a family member or a professional. That's a big can be a big help. Am I right there?
Yeah. I think that the number one thing to have if you're going to succeed in negotiating the maze of corporate health care as an elder when you need it, you need an advocate. I don't think, and that goes for everybody. An advocate is just essential, and without it, you're subject to taking care of yourself at a time when you can least have the capacity and the health to do so.
Yeah. So, Michael, wonderful information. Please share with our listeners maybe how they could reach you, or information on your firm, any contact information you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, we have a small outpost of legal services that we use for elder litigation. It's located in my offices at Petaluma. My office address is 35th Street, Petaluma. The name of my outfit is called Molland Law, and my phone number is 707-202-5511. So that's how you can reach me, and I'm interested in assisting with the the problems, especially the problems that people who are in the for-profit elder care situation have with corporations and their needs for assistance as they age. That's kind of what I'm looking at to deal with in the next few years as a boomer, try to employ my legal skills to help the people that are.
Great. Michael Molland, thank you so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers, and thank you all for joining us as well. So just be safe out there, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Yeah, thank you, Frank.